Welcome to the Thriving Artist Podcast, where we share strategies and support for artists to thrive.
We know that the art world can feel like a lonely place, and we want to provide a network of support, impactful strategies, and an abundance of encouragement to help you grow your authentic art career.
We're your hosts. I'm Jamie Smith.
And I'm Kaylin Butine, and we are also the co-founders of the Thrive Together Network, a community of female and non-binary identifying artists and artists who are caregivers.
We truly believe in community over competition, and we're so glad you're here. Enjoy this episode.
Welcome to this episode of the Thriving Artist Podcast. I'm your host, Kaylin Butine, and after reading Song of Achilles and Circe by Madeline Miller earlier this year, I am currently dreaming of going to Greece.
And I'm Jamie Smith, your second host, and after a bottle of wine last week, it looks like I might be going to Panama for New Year's this year. You know, good things can happen.
Yes, when you drink a bottle of wine. Who knew?
Who knows where you're going to go? Today, we are sharing an episode on how to finish a project well. I think many artists, and certainly Kaylin and I, are right there with you. We have big ideas. We have a grand plan of starting things, getting the ball moving, and finding inspiration for new projects and goals. But the motivation and energy can often start to sway once we've invested in the project, especially and tragically right at the end. It's that final 10% that we have to push ourselves to really keep going and finish the loop.
Yeah, that 10% is challenging. I feel like for me, I would even hone in on that even more, Jamie, and say that the 5% is often what holds me back from just feeling like the feeling of finishing something. It's those little things that we can do to close the loop and really feel like I've completed the project, right? I may finish the artwork or the goal, but I don't do kind of the final steps to wrap it up. I'm usually on to the next thing, sad to say. And so we want this conversation today, this episode today, to be about that final 5% for, sharing some strategies for helping you close the loop, to put the bow on top, to mentally move the needle over from done to done well, and being proud of how well you've wrapped something up.
And one thing that we always want to make sure everyone knows as artists in our community and listeners is that we never prescribe one way of doing things. We understand that it is hard work being artists in this world. It is great work, but everyone is on a unique path. And so we just want to give you some strategies on how to approach sort of feeling really good about finishing off a project. But we know that there are many different ways of approaching things as artists.
Yeah. And I don't think we need to be fooled into that prescriptive form of thinking that we have to finish things a certain way. We titled this episode How to Finish a Project Well, and we're sharing our thoughts on that. But there are many different ways, this can look, and we don't want you to carry any stigma on being perfect or being high achieving, being overproductive, right? You can finish a project in a normal way, in a regular way, in an easy way. It's totally acceptable, whatever word you want to insert there to describe how you finish a project. But what we're sharing here is just strategies to kind of help you tune in to all of that work that you're doing, to help you slow down and recognize what you're doing before you move on to the next thing, and help you celebrate that work and feel really good about it.
And it's so important right now for our community at the Thrive Together Network, because we are just finishing up our September virtual artist residency program. So this was a month where members focused on a project and really put in the time to get that done. And we're now in the process of that reflection and looking at what happened over this time. And so we really wanted to provide a little bit of framework for that. So first of all, what we really want to make sure that we're doing is we're reconnecting with the why of the project. So going back to that beginning of the project, What was the inspiration behind it? Why did you start this? And what did you set out to accomplish when you did? So, by gently examining this why, this is going to help you kind of look at what the successes were. There may have been some not so successful parts of this time, and it's important to look at that as well, because those are what are going to give you your adjustments, your tweaks to know how do you want to set goals next time? What worked well? What was, too big for the time you had? All those types of things are really going to help. You never know, the why that you started with, maybe it's become something bigger and better than you ever could have imagined, or it shifted or changed. Reflection is key. You know how I feel about reflection. And I'm so excited in our community to start reflecting on this, because this is going to help us close this sort of mental loop of, what happened during this time, because that is going to help us grow.
Yeah, kind of pointing us back to the beginning, and now that we're at the end and really looking through that trajectory. So tip number 1, reconnecting with your why. I'm going to move us into tip number 2 for how to finish a project well, which is very connected to tip number 1. And that is to consider the growth that you've had in your journey. So growth, it's a pleasant word, but when you actually consider what growth means, it's pretty hard, right? They don't call it growing pains for nothing. When we finish something, we're often pushing ourselves into new territory. This can be really scary and painful and uncertain. And growth, like the idea of growth, may not be what is presenting as something that you want to celebrate, right? Growth can be hard. And despite sort of finishing this grand project, it might not have gone the way that you expected. It might have been harder than you thought. But that could be just because you're growing, right? You're learning, and it's hard to learn. It's hard to grow. It's hard to develop skills and, become a better artist. But that growth is really what we want. So don't get bogged down in the final product or the end result of your project, which again, may or may not have turned out the way that you expected. We want to invite you into, this season of reflection after the project, and really considering the growth that you've had along your journey. Because really the journey is the whole point, right?
And for tip number 3 is, I think Kaylin, decided that I was the one to speak on this, because this is where I actually struggle the most. When we talk about that 5%, it's this: I can reflect, I can say I grew, all those things. But our tip number 3 is to share the project in some way. And I find for me, I've put so much energy and so much hard work into this beautiful thing. And the sharing is where I become quite vulnerable, as well as I get busy into the next thing. I don't finish the loop. And especially if your goal as an artist is to push the business side of things, if your goal is to really get your work out there, this 5% is going to make all the difference in finishing this project in a powerful way. So taking the time through images, through the work, to really show your growth and your journey, people love that, and they want to encourage you, and it's going to help you take all of that positive energy into your next project. It really does count. It's just hard to push yourself to do at the end. So ways to think about sharing is emailing or texting an art buddy or a peer the finished work. And that's something that can be, that's a more of a private share, but those are really important. And making sure that you're engaging with other people. We have a whole critique program because we believe in having people see the work and you being able to talk about it. Another great way to sort of share the work is scheduling a studio visit. So this is often a mentor, could be an artist, a curator, but having that sort of critique, that sort of conversation with the work in person is honestly invaluable. It's just, again, that push to make that happen. Another way to share is submitting this, putting a package together for an exhibition or an installation somewhere. And really, instead of we go right into the next new thing,
Mm-hmm.
let's make sure that we're leveraging the work we've done. And
Absolutely.
it's hard to do, right? To not get just caught up in the next one. One thing I love is when we see people in our community, artists posting on the Thrive Together network as a place to get reactions, responses from peers. It's so lovely.
Mm.
And then finally, if you're going for that big share, that sort of, public facing, is using the resources at hand of social media and not just, doing it one place, but actually taking the time to getting it up on different platforms, whether that's Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. And the big one I strongly believe in is a newsletter. And that is really inviting this group of people that have signed up to hear about what you're doing. So we want to give the people what they want. And it's just so nice to do that in different ways, in different formats.
Yeah. And I just want to interrupt you, Jamie, and share a reminder, especially for social media use, that, we don't want to forget to respond thoughtfully to that feedback that we get, right? Like we want you to share, but also the sharing is really inviting a conversation around the work and around the project. So we want to make sure that, we remind you to appreciate the investment that people put into you and make sure you're scheduling some time for responding after people, put up nice comments or, ask you questions about your work.
Kaylin taught me a term. It's no posting and ghosting. So
That's
you
right.
can't post and then run away like I have often done. You have to stay there and sit in it and take the feedback and thank people and participate.
Absolutely.
So we really believe in sharing the project. It's going to help complete it for you mentally, but also just, we do so much in our studios on our own. And we want to invite people in. That's the whole point in many cases, is to get this work out in the world.
Yep. I love that, Jamie. Okay. Our last quick tip, you can probably guess what it is, but I feel like we're always talking about this thing, but we really, really believe in reminding you consistently to do this. We want you to finish a project well by celebrating it. So
it's hard to do, to take that time.
It is. I think that's the thing that often holds us back, is giving the resources and the time to actually celebrating. But again, it's about closing that loop. It's about, like those pauses where you recognize the journey that you're on. Otherwise, the train just keeps moving and you're never, you never stop and think about all the work that you've done, what a beautiful life you have, how lucky you are to be an artist. It's those pauses, those breaks, those celebrations that really help bring all of this full circle.
Well, and as you say that, this idea of motion and movement, I think about how we say a lot, you don't want to be on the hamster wheel, and you don't, the 9 to 5, and there's such a entrepreneurial culture of, not doing that. But actually, we can just create our own version of the hamster wheel of the next project, the next big idea.
Yep.
And without closing this loop, it's actually a way to get off of it, get off the wheel, right? And that celebration takes you off, and then you're choosing to get back on to start the new project. So
Yeah.
I really think that is so important. I basically agree of why we think this is important.
Yes,
Isn't
you
that
agree.
nice of me?
And
yeah.
No, I
really believe it.
I love you bringing up the hamster wheel analogy and how, it just kind of reframes this idea of, kind of these patriarchal systems that we're all existing in, this capitalism that just wants us to keep going. And this is a tangible thing that you can do to resist, capitalism and the patriarchy. I really believe this. So hopefully you've planned a celebration in advance while you were prepping for your project. We invite all of the artists participating in our virtual artist residency to do this. But even if you didn't, please don't skip this step. It's really important. Your act of celebration could be as simple as an intentional moment, maybe a small meditation session where you think about the piece, doing some deep breaths, lighting a candle, and just finding a moment of gratitude. It could be something a little bigger where you're investing in some new art supplies or supporting another artist by buying their work for your home as an act of celebration. Or it could include food, mine and Jamie's favorite ways to celebrate, where, my favorite thing to do when completing a big project is to take myself out to dinner, or, on an indulgent coffee shop date and just reflect and think about and savor, the work and the project that I did there while I'm savoring a delicious almond croissant.
Yeah, the best kind of savoring.
Yes, that would be my choice. Although you have to go to a gluten-free bakery if you're
It's
Jamie.
not the same.
No,
Yeah,
it's not the same.
It's not the same, but I'll still savor it to the last crumb.
So whatever you decide to do to close off your project by relishing in this progress, please just celebrate all the work that you're doing as an artist. It's so worth it and really helps you close that loop.
Yes, and that's it. That are our tips for finishing a project well. It's also a reminder to ourselves because we are the little hamsters all the time. So this was really helpful. And the residency has just been such a rich, rewarding month. And I am just, again, so grateful for a community that helps me slow down and celebrate. We've created systems, like a stop for ourselves, Kaylin, of when we have to stop.
Yep.
So just remember that, we encourage you to reconnect with your why, to really reflect on the why of why you started this project, to consider your growth and remember that it's a part of this journey, to share, not to ghost, but to share. And of course, to celebrate. And this is going to add a more depth to your connection to the work. And we hope that you will see yourself as we see you, which is that you've accomplished so much and you've done this project. And we just encourage you, again, not to move to that next thing, but close the loop, 5%. Just go right into it and say that these are my steps to kind of finish this off. And I think you're going to find such a richness in that.
Thanks for wrapping up the episode for us, Jamie. Again, we always like to invite you to join us and be a part of our community. You can connect with us further by heading over to the Thrive Together Network website, which is thrivetogethernetwork.com. As always, Jamie and I are here from you. We are cheering you on, and we really, really believe in the work that you are doing as thriving artists. Thanks for joining us today.